Girls, God's design, every line, every sign.
Welcome back to Thick Girl Theology. There are some things that simply do not belong to us. They are out of bounds. Those things include a person's worth, a child's beauty, a person's humanity, the color of someone's skin, the texture of someone's hair, the shape of someone's body, a person's inherent dignity. Those things were never ours to rank, measure, or assign value to, and yet somewhere along the way, our culture crossed the line. Today's episode is called Out of Bounds because there are boundaries that God established around his image bearers, you and me, that we have no authority to cross. Genesis tells us that every human being is made in the image of God. Not some, but every. And that means your worth was settled before anyone had an opinion. Before fashion decided that this body was desirable and that body was not, before Hollywood decided what beauty actually looks like, before medicine assigned a diagnosis, God already spoke. And if God already settled our worth, who are we to reopen the case? This is called Out of Bounds. I think about Eric Garner. After his death, when he was brutalized by police, much of the public conversation shifted to his body, his asthma, his weight, his health conditions, and those facts actually became part of the legal argument surrounding his death. His body put him on trial instead of the other way around, instead of someone else being on trial about what was done to a human being. I also think about George Floyd. After his death, there were conversations about his size, the tone of his skin, how dark he was, his physical appearance, and other aspects of his life that, for some, shifted attention away from the fundamental question of his humanity and the justice that he was denied. Do you see the pattern? Again and again, the body becomes the story. People, when someone's body becomes the reason we explain away their suffering, we have stepped out of bounds. The image of God doesn't become smaller because a person becomes bigger, and dignity doesn't disappear because someone is black or brown. These things are out of bounds. Then I want to think about some of my friends. And I love talking to my friends because they give personhood and humanity to my research. This friend called me because she had severe headaches and pressure behind her eyes. And she wasn't asking for weight loss advice. She went to the doctor because her head hurt. But instead, she was told that you need to lose weight and stop drinking soda. Now, what's ironic about this is because this person is a vegetarian and doesn't even drink soda. Her symptoms were overshadowed by assumptions made about her body. Weight can influence health, but it should never become an excuse for our medical community to stop listening to us. Because every patient deserves to be heard. Every patient deserves thoughtful care, and every patient deserves dignity out of bounds. Then I think about other more quiet indignities, the ones that never make the evening news. Imagine boarding an airplane, already wondering if you're going to fit in the seat, wondering whether you're going to need to quietly ask for a seatbelt extender, hoping no one stares at you, no one gives you a look of disgust, no one laughs, no one secretly records you on their phone. And many people never have to think about these things. But over the years, there have been public debates and proposals about requiring some people in larger bodies to purchase 2 seats. Reasonable people may disagree about airline policies, but here's my question. How do we talk about people while we debate them? Do we remember that behind every airline seat is a human being? And behind every body is a soul that is loved by God? And stripping people of their dignity is out of bounds. Let's talk about Flint, Michigan for a minute. Parents watched their children drink contaminated water. Families raised concerns. Communities waited to be heard. And all I know about this is that every child deserves clean water, and every family deserves safe drinking water and bathing water. And these are image of God issues more than they are even issues of black and white. I think about neighborhoods where polluting industries have too often been concentrated near lower income communities and communities of color. Communities where children breathe the air, families drink the water, and the communities have borne those burdens to the sound of health problems, disease, cancer, and other ailments. Would we accept those conditions anywhere? Would we accept them in our affluent neighborhoods? Because God called us to steward creation and love our neighbors. These things are out of bounds. I want to talk about colorism for a minute. Some of us grew up watching adults, especially in our Black community, watching adults look at a newborn baby's ear to predict how dark that child would become in adulthood. Listening to comments about whether the baby's hair was good or not good. And if beauty could be measured before the child ever opened their eyes. Some children were scrubbed until their knees hurt using Ajax and bleach. Some were told to stay out of the sun. And I don't say that to shame our forefathers, our parents, and our grandparents in our Black community, because many of them were trying to help their children survive inside of a culture that rewarded proximity to whiteness. And many of us, whether we knew it or not, co-opted those cultural lies. Many of us inherited those messages, but inherited lies are lies just the same. Nowhere in scripture does God say lighter skin is holier, straighter hair is more beautiful. These are cultural standards. They are not kingdom standards, and they are out of bounds. We literally have had to pass laws in our country protecting people from discrimination because they wore their hair that God gave them naturally. In the military, in the workplace, in sports, in schools, we needed legal protection. Women of color needed legal protection to wear our hair the way it grows out of our head. That should make us stop and think. Many historians have also written about the historical relationship between anti-Blackness and anti-fat bias. Hear me here. European descriptions of African women's bodies often emphasized differences in hips and thighs, portraying those differences as signs of inferiority. I want you to let that sink in because these are the roots of anti-fatness, which are linked. They were descriptors to help people who were enslaving another group of people feel superior by making them seem different and thus inferior. Okay? One of the most painful examples of this is the story of Sarah Bartman, and y'all can look this up. A woman made in God's image, a Black woman displayed for crowds, objectified in life, denied dignity even after her death because of the size of her buttocks and the shape of her hips and thighs. The methods have changed, but the temptation to objectify people has not changed. Let's talk about this BMI for a minute. Most people don't realize that the BMI was never designed to diagnose the health of individual people. Yet for decades, it has often been treated as though it could tell a person's entire health story. Health is very complex, and the BMI only talks about height and weight. And bodies are very complex, people are very complex, and no chart can measure or no equation can calculate the quantity or the quality of the person created in the image of God. And while we're talking about dignity, let's talk about the workplace for a minute, because not every wound is loud. Some come disguised as jokes, wrapped in vain compliments, assumptions, Black women on their jobs being told that they're so articulate, or being labeled as aggressive for speaking confidently or standing up for themselves, feeling pressured to code switch and not use Black vernacular or not use Black slang words in the workplace. Having your ideas overlooked until someone else repeats them, and then it's a great idea. Feeling like you must work twice as hard to receive half the recognition. And my parents always told me this growing up, that you have to work twice as hard to receive half the recognition in this world, in this society. So not every experience is the same, but many Black women know these moments. We know these moments. And then there are larger systems where we are being overlooked, being underestimated, feeling like our appearance, our hair, our body, our voice must be altered before we are considered professional, before we are considered leadership material. But the gospel calls us something different. When we encounter another person, the first question should never be, how do you compare? It should be, how do I honor the image of God in you? And this is why Thick Girl Theology exists, and this is why it's so important. Because women of color need space. We need space. Women in larger bodies need space. Women of faith need space to work out these issues and reason together about these things that plague us. A place of dignity where dignity doesn't have to be earned, it's just recognized. And to my white brothers and sisters listening, we all have to stand together. We all need one another because justice has never been a solo assignment. The church should be the safest place on earth for people to inhabit their bodies, to inhabit the bodies God entrusted to them. But in many places and spaces, it is not, because the world has come into the church. And not because we ignore those differences, but it should be a safe place because we refuse to let differences determine dignity. Now, what does the Bible say? Micah says, what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. And neither of those things, none of those things are possible without humility, because humility reminds us that every one of us stands in need of grace. Every person needs grace. And this isn't about politics. This isn't about choosing one group over another, but it is about whether we will treat people the way Jesus calls us to treat people. Will we seek justice? Will we love mercy? Will we walk humbly? Will we remember that every human being, from the smallest to the largest body, from the lightest skin tone to the darkest, from the wealthiest to the poorest, bears the image of God? Because if they do, then our words matter. our faith matters. Our workplaces matter. And the way we look at people matters. And the way we speak to people should matter. Everything matters. The world keeps inviting us to step across these boundaries that God has already established. Boundaries around the sacred worth of every human being. And we need to remember that before we are anything else, we are image bearers. And everything that tries to convince us otherwise is simply out of bounds. And before I close, I just want to talk about, don't want to talk about politics, but I do want to say this. We have a governor's race coming up in the state of Georgia. And one of our candidates released a commercial that said, if you are here illegally, you will be deported or departed. And it doesn't matter what your stance is on illegal immigration, but I want to ask a question of how this lines up with the scriptures that say seek justice and love mercy. If you would make a threat on another person's life, that is dishonoring their humanity. A person is still human if they have crossed a border. A person is still human if they have committed a crime, and that person is still worthy of dignity. These things are out of bounds. These things should not be. Not in our culture, not in our Black communities and brown communities, and especially not for us who claim the name of Christ. This is Mia Deneen, Thick Girl Theology. Let's talk about these things that are out of bounds, and let's change the world together.
Thick girls.